I want to share with you the exact framework that I would use when trying to determine a valuation for a business that's currently for sale. And so I'm going to use routes today as an example, but you can pretty much use this methodology for any business that's currently for sale. And a lot of times people ask me how much I think a business is worth or how much they should offer. And when you come about it like this, it becomes a very, very difficult question to get answered. In contrast, when you understand that there are really 4 different components or sources of valuation, you can start to see things in a tremendous amount of clarity, and you're going to be able to determine your own valuation rather than taking one person's word for it versus the next. And so the first source of valuation that everyone sees when they start off is what the seller is asking. What the seller asks for the business, the asking price, has no correlation with what it's worth. And you can very sort of intuitively understand this whenever you consider that if a seller is highly motivated and he is selling at a discount, or not motivated at all and he's selling at this massive premium, well, in order for you to have the concept of a discount or a premium means that there is another source of valuation that the seller's asking, either higher or lower. So that second source of valuation is what it is worth to you whenever you sell it. So for example, a business, or anything for that matter, is worth what you can sell it for. If I tell you that your car is worth $100,000 in the driveway and it's a beat up Ford Escort from the 1980s, well, it doesn't matter if I say it's worth $100,000. It doesn't matter if there's a certification. It doesn't matter if the Blue Book shows that it's $100,000. People aren't going to give you $100,000 for that car. So what something is worth is what you could sell it for. Very clear, very easy. So how much can you sell something like a FedEx route for? Well, we got to look at our typical buyers. Now, typical buyers, the way that they go about approaching buying these types of businesses is they do their research. And a lot of times their research is basically talking to the sellers and talking to the brokers, both people that might be a little bit biased to get them to buy the damn thing. So what happens is that they start listening and doing research there, and they start to come up with these ideas that essentially routes are all the same. And so they're commodities. They've all got a manager in place. They've all got an old beat up fleet. They've all got drivers that are willing to transfer if given the opportunity. And so they say, well, pretty much they're the same. They're all with FedEx. It's all the same customer. It's all the same industry. It's the same business. It's a commodity. So the way that you value a commodity is you look at how much other people are buying and selling them for. So they look at online, they look on BizQuest, Biz Buy Sell, and they say, well, these things are selling for, let's say, 3.3x in terms of that multiple. So whenever I say 3.3x, I mean 3.3 times the annual net income or cash flow is what the valuation is. So routes right now, 2025, right around a 3x valuation or so, give or take. And so they're going to say, oh, well, these are commodities. These things are worth 3. And that's what I'm going to pay for it because that's what it's worth. So if the seller is asking for 5, that's overpriced. If they're asking for 1, it's underpriced. Now, here's the next issue that we have. And so whenever you are looking at buying one of these things, presuming that you start to understand this business in a much deeper manner than what other people doing their free research and so on and so forth are doing, you're going to understand that there is intrinsic value to these businesses. What the value and what its valuation is while you own it. So for example, let's say you had a house, you built a tennis court in the backyard and you spent $30,000. You're probably not getting $30,000 out of that whenever you go to sell your house. So maybe you get $10,000, but not $30,000. Same thing happens in routes. And because everyone else is thinking that routes are commodities, they're all the same, they don't see these sorts of differences. They think, hey, it's all semi-absentee, manager in place, no big deal. And so if you understand like, hey, this route only takes 5 hours a week to manage, and this route over here takes 55 hours a week. Well, even though they're both for sale at 3.3, and if you bought them, you would probably be able to turn over and sell either one at 3.3x. But what it's worth to you is going to be different. That intrinsic value, because you might say, hey, this one really does take 5 hours a week. And this one over here, seller says it's 5 hours a week, but I know it's 55 or whatever it is, right? And so same thing happens with like the fleet. So let's say, for example, a lot of times when we see untrained buyers or new buyers into the FedEx space, they don't really know how to assess the fleet very well. And a lot of times what they'll do is they'll verify what the seller is saying and whether it's true or not. Verification is a very, very dangerous way to just go about valuation and evaluation in these businesses. You want to do a little bit more than just verify. So let me give you an example of why that might be a problem. Let's say there's two different route bundles for sale. They're both at 3.3x in terms of the valuation and, the asking price and whatnot. But one has a brand new 2025 fleet and the other one is a 2015 fleet. Well, if the seller in both of these businesses has, let's say, $10,000 a year, which is unreasonably low, but let's just pretend it's $10,000 a year for maintenance in each one of these. Well, that may be true for the 2025 and it might be true for the 2015 fleet. The issue is why we care about this is because the 2015 fleet spending $10,000 a year for maintenance probably meant that he ignored half the maintenance that should have been done. He skipped an oil change. He didn't just fix that brake caliper. He just patched it up with duct tape and so on. And so a typical buyer's like, hey, I did all the research here and evaluation, and I think he really did spend $10,000. Yeah, he did. He did spend $10,000. He should have spent $40,000 though. But he spent 10. He didn't lie to you. He's telling you the truth. And the guy with the 2025 fleet, he spent 10,000, but someone that understands this business, they're like, oh, that actually seems right. That actually tracks. He's not like ignoring the maintenance. So again, it's not about what's verifiable or what's true. It's like, this is actually a more sustainable sort of amount of maintenance expense versus the other. So someone that's coming into this that understands the business, they're going to say, yeah, this thing's worth 3.3, but the one that's got the 2025 fleet is worth more. I am getting a good deal on this 3.3x valuation versus the other one, even though theoretically he could buy them both and turn around the next day and sell them for pretty much the same price. So he's getting something that he's really only going to really be able to enjoy or take advantage of whenever he owns it. Same thing for a route that takes 5 hours versus 55 hours. Again, typical buyers don't see that. They think they're all semi-absentee. They don't realize that only some of them can be a little bit more on the passive side, not completely passive, but somewhat more, and so they can't see that. But what he could sell it for is what it's worth. So it's worth 3.3, but it's a better deal to him for certain things. That intrinsic value is different. Now, those are 3 points so far. We've got our commodity idea of what the valuation is from what all the typical buyers are out there doing. We've got the valuation that you're going to experience whenever you own it, or the intrinsic valuation. And then we've got what the seller thinks that it's worth, which is pretty much the most meaningless one. But again, most people try to give the most credibility to that one. And for some reason, it's not. It's the least credible. Final valuation. And this is the only one that matters, is what you think it's worth. So for example, let's say you had a job and you were netting $300,000 on your job. Like the idea of your job having a net income, which it kind of does. But anyway, the point is you've got $300K with your job, right? And you're looking at a FedEx route and it nets $200,000. And that FedEx route, very strong business, probably growing, but it probably also takes 30 hours a week to manage for a variety of reasons. Well, you're not going to be able to keep both of those. So for the person that wants to keep their job and get these FedEx routes, well, the answer is that FedEx route's worth basically zero. Doesn't matter what the intrinsic value is, doesn't matter what the commodity value is, doesn't matter what the seller thinks that it's worth. It's worth zero to someone. And if you take a step back and you look at these businesses as like a job, it starts to become much more intuitive for a lot of people, because a lot of times people will think that these businesses should all be worth something. And it's like, well, is every job worth something? It's like, hey, Starbucks is hiring for $15 an hour or whatever. Go work there. And it's like, no, dude, I don't want to do that. Like, I don't want that to be my day. I don't like the upside or the downside career potentials of working there. I don't want to do it. Same things happen in routes or any business. And so you will see situations where it's like, here's what I think that this thing is worth on a commodity level. Here's the intrinsic value. I don't care about what the seller thinks, but it's worth next to nothing to me. I don't want to do it. I'd rather do these other things. This is exactly what a seller is thinking whenever he's selling the business and trying to get into something else. But the point is, it's like only you can determine what you think that it's worth. Do you want these levels of risk? Do you want the stress of owning a business? Do you want the upside, or maybe even are okay with the downside of owning a business? For some people, the only answer is zero. It's worth zero for a lot of people. And a lot of people have no business buying a business, ironically. But the point is that when you can see it like that, then it becomes clear, because sometimes people will say, what do you think I should offer for this? And it's like, dude, I don't know what your motivations are. I don't know if you want to spend the time on this thing. I don't know if you feel comfortable firing people or dealing with mechanics that are trying to screw you over, and dealing with the changes and adaptation that's required to be successful with contracting with FedEx or any bread route or any business for that matter. So it's like, I have no idea what you should offer on it. It might be zero. But what we do know is what a typical untrained buyer thinks, which is our commoditized pricing. I can tell you that all day long, and we can get a better idea about what the intrinsic value is. Do we have upside potential? Do we have downside potential? How many hours a week is this thing taking? What is it going to look like maybe moving forward if he continued to operate things in the way that he is currently? What's that looking like? Then you could start to say, well, hey, am I getting a good deal or a bad deal if I pay what the seller wants? And so you could start to get all these sorts of ideas to be able to craft your own idea of what that valuation is. But again, at the end of the day, no one can tell you what you should bid on this thing for. No one can tell you what it's worth to you. It's like, what is it worth to, be a lawyer? Oh, well, I got to go to school for 6 years. I got to spend all this money. I might not be able to get any clients. Do I even want to do this? Would I even be good at it? It's like, I don't know. Should you be a lawyer? Maybe, maybe not. Should you buy a business? Maybe, maybe not. But I could tell you what a lawyer typical salary is. I could tell you what the valuation is on a route is based on these commoditized ideas that a lot of people have erroneously whenever they're thinking about buying routes. So whenever you're in a situation where you're trying to think about what this thing is worth and what you should offer on it, think about it in terms of all four. Primarily just three. Ignore what the seller wants. Primarily think about those three things, and then you're going to be able to come up with a much better idea of the valuation. And again, only you are going to be able to come up with the most important idea of the valuation, which is what is it worth to you. So anyway, hopefully this helps out a whole bunch. Take care. Talk soon. Bye-bye.